morning, Nigerians. Welcome to the Economic Discourse. We're looking around the issues of COVID-19, the pandemic, and of course, the lockdown in various parts of the country. We need to continue the conversation. It's Mr. Boason Omofaye, CEO, Frontier Africa Reports. Nice to have you, Boason.
Thank you. It's good to be here again.
Always good to have you on, sir.
My pleasure.
And how's the lockdown experience this day 10?
It's continuing. We're seeing a lot more people on the roads. So, and then you find more individuals who are either trekking or trying to go some places. You'll be surprised some vehicular traffic is beginning to happen even during the lockdown. How we'll contain this and ensure more strict compliance, it remains a challenge for everyone. So it looks like folks are getting a little bit tired of staying at home, and what the authorities are doing ought to be encouraged to ensure stay at home. But again, if you look at when you look at the structure of the economy and the structure of our day-to-day life and living, and you find out that keeping people in a lockdown for a long time at a stretch becomes, when it comes to health issues concerned, which is physical distancing and what have you, becomes a little bit problematic to handle. But we all need to know that this is in everyone's interest. It's in everybody's interest that we stay safe, we stay at home as much as we can. Everyone should understand there's no need for unnecessary movement, as the case may be. I think we all need to take this very, very seriously, give it the seriousness it deserves.
Yes. And speaking of the seriousness it deserves, and in terms of investment, what would you be saying to Nigerians this period in terms of how to manage funds and even invest in this particular challenging time?
The markets aren't going anywhere. So whether you buy the government savings bonds or you buy the regular monthly bond, or you're doing a mutual funds, or you're investing in pension assets, or you're buying equity stocks and all of that, the companies remain, business sector remain, the private sector remains. So you're not missing anything per se. It's just that there will be some pressure, and we can't take that away that the market will experience some pressure, because the companies that are associated with the market will also experience some downward pressure. Some sectors will take the heat a lot more than the others. In our own jurisdiction, for example, the consumer goods will feel it more.
We're already seeing what's happening to aviation.
Yes, as well as aviation. No, speaking specifically to those who are on the market. For example, yes. So those will take it. But again, our informal economy is much smaller in size than our informal economy. So the formal economy and the informal will take some heat. Sector by sector is going to be different. Pharmaceuticals and others may be the ones that will take a bit of gains, as it were, because there's so much demand. Everyone is careful about his or her health. So whether they are listed or unlisted companies, people want to treat their colds, their malaria very quickly. They want to be sure that they stay healthy so that they don't have underlying health issues that will complicate likely infection from coronavirus. So the healthcare, the pharmaceutical sector will make some gains moving forward. The consumer goods and industrial goods who are shut down because workers have been sent home will feel the brunt a lot more. The banking sector, the financial services industry. But if you talk about the financial markets, investors can continue to see that the market will remain and they should not exit because of the pandemic. And I'm not sure any serious investor should exit the market because of the pandemic. The companies are not collapsed. Some of the measures that the governments and the government agencies are taking will provide some soft landing, as it were. And then in say 2 to 3 years, some of this will materialize into on the gain side, from the deficit side to the gain side. But the immediate impact of it will be that, yes, there will be some pressure on earnings for companies that are listed and everyone around. So we will take that in our stride the companies listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, for example, are those who are issuers of bonds and corporate papers on FMDQ, those who have unlisted securities on NESD, like banks and others, and big names like flour mills, Dangote Cement, MTN, and the rest of them. They're in good business already. And as soon as the pandemic is over, they will continue to be in good business. So, and we hope that some of the actions that the government and these agencies are taking in the private sector are taking right now will collapse into the mainstream economic framework that will provide benefits not just to these big names I've mentioned, but to small and medium enterprises moving forward. In fact, this particular pandemic should deepen the resolve of the government at the center and the subnationals, which are state governments, to pursue far and more aggressively the non-oil sector economic diversification program. In fact, if we're running it before at 15, 20, 25, 30%, we should be running it now at about 90%, knowing fully well that one, we have an opportunity to push oil aside in a manner of speaking, and mainstream non-oil sector, agro-industrialization, and everything else in between. Logistics and infrastructure, raise our productivity.
Yeah, and then when you look at businesses, you talked about the SMEs being key players in terms of our comparative advantage and the value they bring. We're seeing economies like the US and UK looking at how they can strategically support them with specific led interventions across sectors. Isn't that the direction we should take? I know the CBN has talked about the fact that it's the bailout, the interventions running to trillions will also cover SMEs, and has brought out guidelines. But in terms of targeted sectors, should we be looking at, what sectors should we be looking at in terms of looking at the impact of that intervention, knowing that, okay, at the end of this, this is what has been the result?
I think between the central bank and the bankers committee, for anyone and everyone who is doing business in Nigeria, in the small and medium enterprises, perhaps with the exception of the vulcanizer just down my street, but if you classify ProShare, for example, or WebTV as an SME, I'm sure you are captured within the banking and financial system space. So almost every SME that are applying for bank loans, who's gotten loans from the bank, or is doing business with the banks, are clearly identified on the books of the banks in Nigeria, of all the commercial banks. So we know ourselves. Okay? Those who are listed on the stock exchange, on the NESD, and all of that are also known. So it's easy for the central bank to use the database that it has, and perhaps some of the database from this Bureau of Statistics, to identify these SMEs. Remember, the Bankers Committee already have the MSMEs funds, the SMEs funds. The central bank had intervened very well in the past few years in agriculture, in textiles, in cotton production, in rice and palm oil and what have you, in partnership with some states and industry stakeholders. And you remember, for most of 2019, the central bank governor and his team kept meeting with some state governors and stakeholders within these few industries around the 41 to 43 items list. So it's easy to know who needs this intervention. So I have faith and confidence that they will deploy through the guidelines to those who will feel the impact. Because if you want to feed, for example, if you take palm oil, for example, you know that Presco, Okomu, oil, and a few others, perhaps not listed, are involved in palm oil. The byproduct of that goes to Unilever to make butter and to make soaps and detergents and a few other things. So you know who to incentivize through this COVID coalition fund and other funds that are being put together. So I have faith that the regulators in the market, if you look at the telecom sector, I'm sure the central bank will be working with the NCC as well to know those who are SMEs within the ICT space, okay, to also incentivize them. Aside from the big boys who don't need, well, I don't want to mention names who don't need incentives. I'm sure MTN needs incentives. If you give them, they'll take. Global companies incentives. I mean,
some form of incentives. I mean, big oil companies have met with President Trump to look at interventions. Big oil companies, ExxonMobil, Chevron.
Now, these guys have taken large pay package over time.
Yeah.
So they can give back.
Yeah.
But if you look at the small businesses and the approach the U.S. authorities are doing, you have their own small business association called the SBA.
Yeah.
You go through these.
Nigeria has NASME.
Yeah, we have NASME, we have SMEDAN, and others.
Yes.
And working with the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, for example, and I'm sure the Central Bank will work with Lagos State Chamber of Commerce and NASIMA, which is the Chamber for Commerce Industry. And the ones in Abuja, for example.
Abuja Chamber of Commerce, ASIMA,
and maybe the one in Ogun State, to identify the real sectors, the SMEs within what sectors that the incentives will go through. This pandemic also make it imperative for the bankers committee, the banks individually, and the regulators to deepen the interventions and the holidays, whether it's a tax holiday in line with LRS or FRS, across certain jurisdictions to say we can smoothen things for you.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't see this only as a Lagos State issue. We should understand that if you have lockdown in Lagos and what have you, there are those who produce agricultural products across the country that need Lagos market that may not have the opportunity to reach Lagos, or whose production have been cut back because of the slowdown because of the lockdown in Lagos, Ogun, and Abuja. They also need to be part of the program. So we shouldn't see these interventions for MSMEs as a Lagos, Abuja, and Ogun State affairs. We should look at it across country. Those who have this connected with Lagos State, connections with Lagos State, and see how they can also be incentivized one way or the other to ensure that it goes around in an equitable manner that helps cushion the hard landing that we would have from this pandemic.
It's very critical because these are, SMEs are known as the drivers of the economy. I mean,
exactly.
Employed, they have to be encouraged, they have to be getting these interventions to be incentivized, like you said, to really engage employees and even get more activities. And when we look at this period for businesses, it will be really challenging. What do you see in terms of business continuity plan or business contingency plan strategies from CEOs, sustaining activities to ensure the ILO is saying that we may be seeing 20 million jobs gone by this period if things are not managed properly? We already have
unemployment specter on our hands. About 3.1% by the last data we had from the Statistics Office. That, of course, everyone believes that's a figure is much higher than it was. The interventions that the federal government is doing through the various agencies and everyone else should be aimed at ensuring that we don't lose so much more jobs from the existing job portfolio that we have, and that this can stimulate adding more moving on. In other words, we use one stone to kill two birds in terms of our own job creation, unemployment, whatever it is. The social intervention program, making sure folks have at least one meal a day, is honorable, is laudable. At the same time, we should look at, okay, how can we use this partly? Because now these monies are coming from left, right, and center. We didn't have this money already. We revised downward our budget size and do some cutting. That's also good, as we've seen it in the news.
Review of the budget benchmark.
Yes, the budget benchmark and what have you. Yes. That would take us a little bit lower, so the plane is flying at a lower altitude than at a higher altitude. How do we ensure that we carry everybody along? Schools will be reopening at some point down the rest of the year or the couple of months, hopefully, so that students can go back to school, folks can go back to full business. This presents us an opportunity to learn new tricks of how to say, look, if we're dealing with 23 or 25 or 27% unemployment before, hypothetically speaking, how do we ensure that we don't grow to 30, 35, or 40 because of the pandemic, that we can keep that number and try to see how we can add more to it. So the level of a creativity in governance. This is the time it should set in between the executive and the legislature, and not just at the federal level. And I'll keep saying this every day you give me an opportunity to be on this show, that at the state government levels, the state government shouldn't just sit down and be waiting for something that will come from Abuja and what have you, but to see that once this is over, and this will be over one way or the other, jobs have to be created. Those who have existing jobs shouldn't lose them unnecessarily. And we should use it as an opportunity to create more. So some folks are asking me, when this is over, what happens to all the centers being created for testing and other things that you've seen all over Lagos? What, for example, what happens?
Like Kakovi wants to set up 6 across the country, which is good.
Yes.
Which is good with facilities.
Yes. It'll be good to set them up. Okay? But we need to ensure that they're properly set up in a structured manner, that items don't go missing. Moving forward. And I'll keep sounding, playing the devil's advocate, so that things that it don't allow this thing to revert to our usual way, in which drugs are supplied from the World Health Organization, other donors, into hospitals, and before you know it, they find their way into, they're diverted into private enterprises and pharmacies and all of that. We need to ensure that we have this tight rein over this. So this gives us also an opportunity to show that the government truly cares. When we say government truly cares, it's not just for the people out there to expect that rice and chicken will get to their street next week before the lockdown is over. That is not enough. When we want to show that the government cares, is that the business continuity question you ask is that in a country such as this, where the informal sector far outweighs the formal sector, it depends first on the government to ensure the business continuity. Because the man who's doing one-man business, vulcanizer down the road, is living from hand-to-mouth economy. That's what it runs. To ensure that it has that continuity depends far more on the government than on him. Okay? So the entire small business enterprises, one-man business, the various policies we've been trying to put in place, ab initio, should all now come together and find a new firepower under this pandemic than before. In fact, I think we should use the 2020 budget as a realistic budget moving forward on one side.
In terms of the assumptions and the review.
And then have a different economic stimulus program. And I'm beginning to hear that through some conversations online, in the news, that yes, it looks like we want to raise funds through the 7 billion or whatever to fund the budget. But that is not enough. As other countries are doing, we need to have a totally new economic stimulus program that takes COVID-19 pandemic on board and goes beyond the lifespan of COVID-19 pandemic. That is the only way in which we use our lowest level at this point as a basis of going higher. That is the way. So it shouldn't be about just resolving this issue, this pandemic, and just move on. But how do we use it to catalyze the next level where we want to be? So we have a new low level right now. It's just like in the market. When the market hits certain support level, we begin to use how far can the market go from this base level. That is how the government and the center and the subnationals should take the current pandemic situation, in my view.
And we talk about policy, and let's look at even the challenges of supplies. I mean, supermarket malls are supposed to have supplies in this period. We need to go get stationery, get relevant things. How is it in terms of import at this period? How are imports still happening? And then wouldn't that be a challenge for supply chains, markets, malls, in terms of meeting the needs of Nigerians at this time?
There's a disruption in the global supply chain. So, but again, it goes two ways. Supplies, as long as we have what it takes to bring them in, if they are on the list that are approved and necessary, yes, we'll bring them in. The ports are still open.
They're not closed.
For business. So if you have delivery for your stores, you can bring them in. The lockdown in some part of the country still allows certain hours for folks to make necessary purchases of consumer goods, and so that will continue to go on. Disposable income will therefore be an issue if you will be able to spend as much as you would want to spend previously. So that may put some pressure on the supermarkets and the stores. That is on one side. The flip side of it is that are there some of these products that we can make locally by our MSMEs? So
take, for example, the intervention for the healthcare.
Yes.
Pharmaceutical companies get intervention
which is a very beautiful and very great idea.
Well, we need to look at the things that we can get on now.
Yes, I just saw in the news a textile company, a factory in Kenya producing face masks.
Face masks, yes. For people.
So instead of bringing in face masks, we can produce we can produce it locally by our garment companies. And so those who are doing fashion parade and doing fashion designs and on the red carpet, this is the time for them to use their sewing machines and whatever, and get some face masks for us. That would be a good contribution. That would be something moving forward. In a few of the products that we need to that we are importing, that we think we have a local alternative to it. And I think this pandemic would bring to bear this persistent call by the government and some of its agencies, like the Central Bank, for example, say, look, we need to keep looking inward. What are the things we can produce locally with the little source of energy that we have, with electricity, and reading in the news is okay. 2 months, the disco says we're going to have free electricity for 2 months, which is a good gesture by all the disco. Thank you folks for that. And we can, the MSMEs use this 2 months free electricity to produce some things, honey, few things, sugar, they can produce locally, that will help keep the consumers, okay? Because the production and the raw materials you can do locally, you know, it just looks as if the Central Bank and the Monetary Policy Committee seem to have a crystal ball. Again, I'll keep referring to the Monetary Policy Committee.
I keep always the fiscal should come out.
The fiscal authority should step in, and everybody should try to produce what you can source locally. I'm surprised. The whole of 2018, 2019, the Monetary Policy, the Central Bank government, every opportunity it has, always emphasizing the need for us to produce locally. Let's do the little we can locally. Let's keep doing what we can locally. Now it looks like everything he and the members of the policy committee have said, it looks like it just come true. As if they knew this was going to come. Maybe they knew. I don't know. I don't know what they're doing in the middle. But somehow, when certain government agencies and authorities speak, I think it is time for us to begin to say we need to take them seriously.
Yes.
We need to begin to take government seriously and not to think that at every point in time the government is wrong or that the government is being selfish in this particular case. Now look at where we are today. Look at our import bill for 2014, 2015, 2016. If we hadn't reined in 41 items, and at the point in time I was saying, why not make it 100? So that the earlier we take the pain in, the quicker we can get out of the pain and enjoy the gains. Yeah. Because just like the Chinese and the Vietnamese and others, you just take the pain quickly so that you can enjoy the gain. It's just like you need that injection. Take the pain quickly. The benefits last longer.
Those hard choices will be made.
Those hard choices will be made.
They will be more of a productivity-based economy.
Thank you. Yeah, we would have gotten to this stage long ago. But even if we hadn't started with the 41 items, imagine if we still had this free, open skies, blue ocean import driving system that we had 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. Imagine what we have today. We're looking at the bottom of the barrel. Look at our budget. It's just gone down. Our deficit is higher. We're borrowing left, right, and center.
For MDBs?
Thank you. So
and
what
put on hold the initial $28 billion
it always tells me that, look, sometimes when they say, look, let us look inwards, look inwards, and everybody says, oh no, the local rice, some stones inside it, I can't eat it, I want the foreign rice. They say, look, hold on a second. Can we clean up the local rice, encourage the guys who's producing the local rice to clean it up so that it becomes it becomes palatable, rather than encouraging imported rice.
And come to think of it, you just talked about the rice. You know, the decision of giving out seized rice to Nigerians, something that foreign, and the issue of quality and the consumer consent.
Seized rice do not necessarily mean they are
imported.
Not that rice that are seized are bad.
No.
That the rice are bad. If you bring in goods via unapproved routes, okay, or is on prohibited list, not on the NAFDAC or the Ministry of Health prohibition list, but by regulation, the country says you can't bring this in because of socio-economic policy. It does not mean that the standard of, or the product, the quality of what you are bringing in is bad.
And the SON is also involved.
It could be really good, but if you break in the law, you break in the law. So it is seized. But seizing substandard goods or products is a totally different thing. And that should just go straight to destruction, okay, or return to the country of origin. But if they were seized, but they were quality products ab initio, the what you call the rules that apply to how it is approved for release, for distribution to the people, therefore becomes very critical. Who has the power to say, let us
customs have that
power? Is the power of the president? Is the finance ministry? Does it lie with the National Assembly and all of that? I think
it lie with national interest, because this has to do with people, citizens too.
Yeah, I agree. But again, that we should follow the rule of law. So that at the end of the day, we don't end up this pandemic doing too many or so many things out of the rule of law and structure that will end up disorganizing our already destructured way of doing things, then it makes it a lot messier than before. So everyone should know within the governance structure.
There should be much coordination.
Coordination. Who should do this? Who should give approval? If you're going to remove a petrol subsidy, it's a very fanciful and sexy idea at this point in time.
We'll come to that discourse now. You know, this discussion, the GMD of NNPC, that's the Group Managing Director, Mr. Mele Kolokiari, was talking about this challenge of the subsidy. I mean, people have SUVs, have different cars, and it's elitist. We need to stop that and then channel the finances and resources to infrastructure projects, things that have further impacts on the citizens. But the question that comes to mind is, does the state oil company, NNPC, does it have that clear right to fix the price of petroleum to spirit? Is it something that's the Ministry of Petroleum? Because we need to look at coordination and policy rules in this regard, signaling, which is very important.
I haven't heard much from the Ministry of Petroleum Resources. It looks like the to be receiver is a little bit more concerned about what is going on in Nigeria.
The plus where the price for Saudi Arabia and Russia.
Yeah, the big elephants. So I'm sure he's more focused on that right now. How to secure Nigeria's best position for the meeting that's going to happen today. So today is a very big day for the oil market. It's also a big day for the World Bank. A major release of an African report today, which should be about 1 p.m. Nigerian time. So it's a big day. So for the OPEC meeting, I'm sure his ears and eyes are glued to what's going on and Vienna and Saudi Arabia. So I think that's why he's focused. So, but then NNPC is the state oil corporation, and I need to see what the act setting up the NNPC prescribed. PPR, which is
which
is an agency set up by law,
yeah,
or the Act of the National Assembly to set prices and what have you, be part of issues or range of licenses for petrol product imports and all of that. So we need to see who really has the final say in that. But is it good for us to remove petrol subsidy? Yes, it's good. We've been going around this for as long as I was a business journalist.
For over a decade or almost 2 decades.
No, we've been on this for about close to 3 decades.
I mean, from the time even Professor Tamno,
the downstream sector, deregulation and all that, to have boxes filled with seminar papers and what have you, that and sometimes I get tired of talking about it. But until it's done, it's not yet done. So the removal is okay. We need to move on. How we transit and take that budgeted amount for petrol subsidy from the subsidy side into the main budget account, and what I'm reading the news says is going to be used for some other critical things.
Yes, which has to be very
sounds very nice but vague,
ambiguous,
and a bit ambiguous. Vague. I rather use the word vague. Okay. Yeah, it's vague because it does not say critically how it will be done. What sector will it go into? I think that we should have thought that through before we make the announcement, so that when we say we're taking it from subsidy account, are we giving it to NSIA, Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority, straight away, so that we know that, look,
our funds are there.
Yes, our funds are there.
And will be well managed.
Thank you. So we just say, look, this money goes straight from the subsidy NNPC account straight to Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority, so that we know where it goes. So just go from this government agency to this government agency. So NSI is investing it in critical infrastructure, whatever it is that it's doing, and other investment assets, whether locally or internationally. But to take it and say it's going to go somewhere that we don't know the destination, from the day the pronouncement is made, I'm not too sure that is good on the governance side in terms of government agencies making pronouncements. So with due respect to NNPC and the GMD, I think we need to clear that out first. Okay. If you remember, the Abacha loot is coming in, and from the front of the government says this is how we're going to share it. Yeah. Well, some folks disagree on whether it should be shared, but it was there from the beginning that once it comes in, this is an agreement with the World Bank. Yeah. We're making provisions for how it's going to be shared. Is how to determine those who are poor. So it's clear. Having been on the petrol subsidy for donkey years, we should therefore have had a very clear and final idea of where the money will go. So once you expunge it from the budget, say Otto is going into your NSIA, or we're going to take it as, or we're going to put it into, place it in the central bank, pending the determination of the National Economic Council on it, or the federal cabinet, whatever, who will decide on it, or injunction of the National Assembly. But to say it will go into critical sectors of the economy, every sector in Nigeria is critical. I am critical in the media. Media is critical. Newspaper is critical. Electricity is critical. Schools are critical. Healthcare is critical. SMEs are critical. So everybody's critical. There's no part of Nigeria that's not critical. Even the villa is critical. So we need to sort that out very quickly before folks start to ask, well, show me the money, where I can't follow the money because I know he's living here, but I don't know the destination.
And this period, the Fiscal Stimulus Committee, chaired by the Minister of Finance, Mr. Zainab Ahmed, has been meeting and looking at ways to really explore managing the COVID-19 situation and also look at other key decisions that should be taken to stabilize the economy. We've been talking about fiscal action at this time. So what are the 2-3 things you'd like to see happen as we see this unfold in this lockdown period?
I'm sure if you ask the finance minister herself, some questions about some definitive things right now, she will speak about what is being done, but I'm not sure she'll be quite definitive about the end game.
Yeah, the definition of the end game is...
The end game is very difficult to get it. But we can hazard and plan. That you can do. So, so based on what is being done, and quite a lot is being done, and there was this report published released yesterday by one of the investment banks, Chapel Hill, Denham. It was released late yesterday afternoon. And the point was that so much is being done. The whole package for stimulus is coming to about 1 trillion, 2 trillion, whatever it is, this and that. But they're not being, in a manner of speaking, codified into a single economic we can say this is it. And that is the issue right now. Yeah. So Zenab is leading this, the central bank is leading that.
We already have an existing ERGP that
we have an ERGP which has to go out and all of that. NFPC is trying to do its own. How all of this come together into a single national economic stimulus plan remains to be seen. So I appreciate what everybody on the field is doing, but then we need to coordinate it in a way in which it doesn't look like we're all doing fire brigade work. At the end of the day, the fire is put out, but we still can't see how we move forward from the end of that fire brigade work. So it's good, but then I think there's still need for us to harmonize everything together into a single document and say this is what it is. That gives us a clear idea of how to plan moving forward. Because whether we like it or not, money is going around, this and that, but then you need to plan for 2021 budget. How does all of this will go into it? We need 2022. The new national economic program that Mr. President spoke about last year, that should be the one for the year 2040. Right?
We're thinking it should be 30 years, 2020 to 2050, like the NESG, Nigerian Watch Group.
Yes.
A 30-year bold plan.
Yes.
So
even if it's 20-year or 40-year program, will all of this flow into it? Will they form the feedstock for that new economic renaissance program that we're planning? Remain to be seen. So the authorities, the government needs to come clear very quickly how all of this will come together, that we can say this is what we are working on, rather than trying to source much money as possible locally and globally, and try to just use it to treat pandemic. And at the end of the day, the structure of the economy we're running before remains exactly the same without really leading us to a better future. That remains the crux of the entire conversation.
Yeah, and as we wrap up, what are your thoughts? The senior bank chief said this need now to have a particular percentage of budget fund for health intervention in terms of health infrastructure. If we could cover issues like pandemics and all that, we need to have that. What's your thought about?
I agree. The AFDB did a $3 billion special pandemic bond on the London Stock Exchange a few years ago. I think we should do that.
Yes.
I think we should buy into that if we hadn't done that already as a sovereign. Yeah. And we should have our own. I think we'd rather use the market.
Yes.
I'd rather we use the markets rather than
health bond, health.
Yes, if you have a pandemic, a COVID-19, whatever bond that is 20, 30, 40 billion naira, and you say, look, stock exchange, FMDQ, DMO, central bank, Ministry of Finance, sit across the table, package this 50 billion naira COVID-19 bond, let's float it, PFAs, insurance, mutual funds, everybody take it on board, list it on FMDQ and the Nigerian Stock Exchange. What's wrong with that? That is a whole lot better. If you give that to the market, you find even international investors.
Okay, because there's governance.
There's governance, there's a market, so there's transparency from the one. So instead of putting some money aside for health sector, whatever that goes into, you're not sure where it goes under Ministry of Health, it's going to be under the NCDC, you don't know which government agency is really going to the Ministry of Finance, you're not sure where the money is. Just call the central bank, the FMDQ, Nigerian Stock Exchange, with Ministry of Finance, and everybody sit down with the Vice President and maybe Mr. President himself and say, look, maybe with the NSIA, which urges the agency, and say, look, all of you, give me a 50 or 100 billion naira healthcare sector package. And use some of the great ideas that the central bank and the bankers committee have put together for these 12 pharmaceutical companies into it, and get perhaps some hospitals into it, so that we have a clear cut direction. So we know the size of the money, we know for how many years this bond will be. It could be a 50-year, 100-year bond, so that it outlives all of us, as it were, at least for those of us who are 50 already. So, and then you know the rate at which you're floating the bond. Okay, you bring everybody on board, everybody knows the yield on it, so it's tradable as an investable asset, and it just makes the whole job fine. So the banks buys into it, PFAs, insurance companies, listed companies, everybody can buy into it. So you make it possible. So every Nigerian says, we have a bond of which I have my 5,000 or 10,000 naira stake into this healthcare sector. Then you can now tie the key government agencies to its distribution as per within the healthcare sector. hospitals, drug manufacturers, those who are doing X, Y, Z. So the health sector is big. So it's not just about those who do drugs, but the hospitals. How do we take care of the UCH, the deficiencies that we see a few days ago, talk about the R&D, the universities. How do we get the universities, the virology department of schools into it, to key to the 100 billion naira? That is my own idea of how we should go about this. So let's do a 50 to 100 billion. And say, look, University of Ahmadu Bello, your medicine department, University of Ibadan, UNN in Enugu, whatever, 10, 50 universities will be part of this fund. So hospitals across the 6 geopolitical zones will be part of it. State hospitals across also will be part of it. The UCH, LUTH, whatever, will be part of it. So these pharmaceutical companies or those who will qualify later will also be part of it. So it goes to industrialize and elevate that sector. So those who will be producing face masks or Panadol or whatever moving forward knows exactly what they're doing, and they have the fund warehoused between the DMO and the central bank and the Ministry of Finance. So for me, that is a better way of handling this. So I'm looking for the call to be made today for Nigeria to follow the footsteps of the AFDB and say, look, you've done this, and we can list it not just on one market. You can list it anywhere. It's okay. I think that is the end of the conversation. I think that's a little bit. I have a Nigerian pandemic 100 billion naira bond. You'll be shocked how everybody will buy into it.
Yes, definitely.
If you denominate it at the 1,000 naira, I put my 10,000 or 5,000 naira into it because that is a health package for my future. At least if I can't get it, my kids get it. The same thing applies to you.
Yes.
Every Nigerian put his mouth where he said, look, for the next pandemic, whatever it is, this and that, we did the green bond already.
Yes.
The government has done green bond.
Green bond,
So we can do a pandemic COVID-19 bond.
Wow.
100 billion. That's the figure.
Am
I so ambitious?
No. It's good to be ambitious.
I thought I'd be ambitious with 100 billion. No. I think 100 billion is just a small amount of money. We'll get it.
We'll get it, yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Boason Omofaye, for the time. Let's conversing about
Thanks for bringing me.
Yes. And that'll be all for this edition. We're supposed to have Dr. Boason Omofaye, CEO, BA Consult and Economist. We'll be having him tomorrow for this session and discuss. Till we come your way again, thank you for watching. Have a nice day and stay safe.